Welcome to our second episode of our political education series, BroBots versus the People, Tech Money in Politics. I'm your host, Jacinta Gonzalez, and I am very excited to be here for a second episode. During our last session, our last episode, we talked about who are the BroBots, right? Who are these minions who are serving the tech broligarchy? But in the first episode, we also introduced you to some of the tech industry players that are putting money into the midterms. We talked about the three AI super PAC networks to some of the companies and the individuals that are bankrolling them. But today's episode is called Clocking the BroBots Playbook. And today we're really going to get into what the tech broligarchs and their minions, the BroBots, are doing, what their strategy is this political cycle, and how they're going to try to impact the elections. We're going to have some really incredible guest speakers join us to break down their blueprint, how they're trying to steal the midterms. But at the end, y'all, we have a special surprise for y'all because we know that this is all art that has been human made, all of these robot illustrations. But if you're like me and you're like, illustrations are great, but I want some action, stay tuned because at the end of the episode, we're going to be doing the first screening of the BroBots animation that we have been working on. So we're really, really excited to share that with all of you. So please stay tuned until the end to be able to check that out. But that's it. That's our show. That's what we're going to be doing today. And so to start us off, to start to warm up, we're going to be talking about some of the shady tactics that the Broligarchs and their BroBots have been up to. And here to divulge the big tech's top 5 shady tactics, we have two badass organizers, our very own campaign specialist, Danny Sendejas, and a special guest, Taylor Frazier McCollum, from community advocate who's a community advocate with No Landover Data Center Movement. And they're going to tell us all of the shady stuff that they have been up to. So over to you, Danny and Taylor.
Thank you, Jacinta, and thank you for joining us today, Taylor. Taylor, before we start counting down these tactics, I want to start with one you've experienced yourself in person, astroturfing. Folks maybe have heard this term before, but for folks in the audience who aren't familiar, astroturfing is when an industry manufactures the appearance of grassroots support. So fake grass, fake roots. We know that real grassroots movements grow from people organizing their neighbors. AstroTurf gets rolled out by a PR firm, and at a county meeting in Prince George County, Maryland, you saw it up close. And we actually have, I think, this video here, which I think you're in.
Is
Let's check it
good.
out.
I said, hope you're enjoying the paycheck.
How do you like the taste of poison in your water? How do you like the taste of poison in your water?
How y'all doing, Prince George's? I don't know about these orange shorts, but I'm from Prince George's.
Period.
Landover, right down the road, like 202, like all day. What's up? So if you're not from Prince George's, you don't need to be here because your voice doesn't need to be heard. And I'm going off script right now, but at the end of the day, I know you're paid protesters. I know you're sent here by somebody. You didn't just show up on your own because you want data centers in your community. You showed up because you had to. You showed up because you need to make $1. And I don't need to make $1.
Y'all ain't buy them shirts.
And my well-being. So y'all can kick rocks all day.
So, Taylor, if you're there, if you can hear us, maybe you can share a little bit about what that was like. All right. I think we maybe Taylor's trying to reconnect, but we know that this is wild to see, right? And the thing is that this whole parking lot is the big tech data center industry playbook in miniature form. If the support were real, they wouldn't have to rent it. And so folks in Maryland had already passed a 2-year pause on new hyperscale data centers. And that happened anyways, despite this. We saw that the bright orange t-shirts lost. So we're going to keep that in mind as we count down what big tech is running nationally in this election. Um, and everything you're about to hear is the same move at a bigger scale, right? The big tech data center industry is manufacturing the support that they don't have. And so, what do you say, Taylor? Should we get into it? We hear you, Taylor. Oh, we can't hear you actually. Your audio isn't coming through. But if it's all right, I'm gonna kick us off with uh tactic number 5, which is hiding the money in shell companies. So we've seen that federal law says super PACs have to tell the public money who they're actually paying. Two of the biggest AI super PACs, American Mission and Think Big, found a workaround, which isn't surprising for this industry. They're all about the shady tactics. So, according to a complaint filed by the Campaign Legal Center with the FEC in May, these PACs routed over $10.5 million, basically everything they spent, through two shell companies. And here's why we're certain that they're shell companies. Both LLCs were registered in Delaware on the exact same day. Both list their address as mail centers in Nevada. They don't have a website and not even any staff that anybody can find. They don't have any other clients. One of them got paid for polling, TV ads, digital ads, direct mails, texting, and consulting. And that's 6 different specialized businesses supposedly running out of a P.O. box. So it reminds us of when season 4 of Weeds, if folks watch that show, when Nancy creates a maternity store out of a drug front. There we go.
I have not seen that show, but that seems like a shady thing to do.
Yep. And why it matters to see that we can't see who's getting paid is because we can't see who's actually running these campaigns, right? Or whether they're PACs that are illegally coordinating with candidates. The Campaign Legal Center says that this violates federal disclosure law. The FEC hasn't ruled yet, so it's just a complaint. But the shell companies, the same day registration, the mail centers, all of that is on public record, and it seems like these AI PACs are finding a way to hide what they're doing.
They are up to some shady things, and just while we're waiting for Taylor to jump in and have her audio work, I'll help you out with number 4, Danny, which is flooding the zone with fake news. One of the things that we've really started to notice is that AI generated news is starting to multiply. Um, like in the Marvel multiverse, just having more and more places where there have hundreds of local news outlets that are actually churning out these machine-written stories. But the problem is that these stories are actually convincing people. We found that researchers at Yale found that people often trust these fake local sites even more than actual real ones. And the AI industry is starting to use AI-generated news also. So investigators in the Midas project found a site called Acutus that published 94 articles in a few months, and 69% were entirely machine generated. It even had AI bots posing as reporters, emailing real people for interviews under fake names. So they're really kind of going to these extremes that we hadn't seen before. And one AI policy advocate got an interview request from a journalist called Michael Chen, and Michael Chen does not even exist. So,
Ridiculous. Yeah, what are the articles about?
A lot of them were focused on attacking critics of the AI industry, right? So if anything talking about safety researchers, pro-regulation voices, one article went after an AI safety advocate. So much so that their clients were actually trying to contact them and seeing if they should still work with them.
Jeez, and who's behind it?
The site won't say, but the investigators traced the only people promoting these fake articles to PR firms linked with Leading the Future, the biggest AI super PAC network funded by your favorite, OpenAI, and Andreessen Horowitz. So we can't tell you it's proven that OpenAI, because OpenAI, of course, is not answering questions about it, but we can tell you that somebody built a BroBot newsroom to attack the AI critics and actually run a trail that leads, and have left a trail that leads back to the AI industry.
Hmm. Yeah, and the same folks who say they're all about using AI responsibly and ethically, um, it's the same people doing this stuff, right? So we see this is a screenshot from OpenAI's website.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And on to number three in Big Tech's top five shady tactics this election season. And this is probably one folks have seen a lot, running ads that never say AI. So what do AI super PACs talk about? They talk about Trump, they talk about ICE, China, healthcare, but you know what they don't talk about? AI. So NBC News looked at these ads and found what they're about, quote, everything except AI.
But why are they trying to hide their own, like, why are they trying to hide its own issue?
I think we all know, right? Because we all hate hate. So because they've seen the polls, people don't want data centers near them. They've lost a debate on AI because people are worried about their jobs, about how it affects their children, about how AI is being used to kill people abroad. They've lost the public on AI, so they don't want to debate it. They spend their money getting pro AI candidates elected on other issues, right? So again, shady tactics. In Texas, Leading the Future spent about $372,000 branding a Republican, a Trump conservative, a MAGA warrior, but they never once said anything about AI. In North Carolina, Anthropic's PAC network spent about 1.6 million backing a Democrat with ads praising her for holding ICE accountable. Again, never said anything about AI. So same playbook, both parties. It's just whatever sells in that district. So now we're going to take a look at one of these ads.
Valerie Fouché is standing up to Trump every single day. She's leading the fight to hold ICE accountable, pushing to impeach those responsible for raids on our neighborhoods and abuses of the Constitution. Valerie's fighting to make the ultra-wealthy pay their fair share by ending Trump's giveaways to billionaires. And when Trump went after North Carolina's manufacturing jobs, Valerie fought back. Valerie Fouché, fighting for our community every single day. Jobs and Democracy PAC is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
Heard a
Ooh,
lot of words, didn't hear AI.
lot of words.
You know,
Taylor, you back with us? Oh, we still can't hear you, Taylor.
the audio's still struggling.
Yeah.
This tech. It's
There,
all good. Uh-huh.
I think it's the orange shirts, Taylor. They're coming back with different strategies. Try again. Okay. Well, until we'll continue to wait for Taylor to be able to come in here. But I know, Jenny, that they actually even went further in New York. Have you heard
Yeah.
about what happened in New York?
Yeah. So Assemblymember Alex Boris wrote New York's AI safety law. So the industry made an example of him. They spent over $7 million attacking him, not on AI. The ad said his old tech job made him complicit with ICE. The PAC running those ads is funded by none other than a co-founder of Palantir, which folks I'm sure have heard about. The company that actually powers ICE's deportation machine paid for ads attacking someone else for being connected to ICE.
They know just what to say when people don't want to hear what their agenda is. Um, it's like someone with a PhD on a plane saying, "Don't worry, just trust me. I'm a doctor."
For
Um,
real.
but let's get into number two. What is number two in big tech's shady tactics in this election season? And it is the pushing China panic. I think we've all heard this one. We've all seen it, different versions of it. But what we've seen is like Wired reported this spring that Build America, American AI, the dark money arm of the Leading the Future network, is paying lifestyle influencers on TikTok and Instagram up to $5,000 per video. First, the video celebrated American AI. Then came phase two, where they're telling their following that Chinese AI is coming for your data, your job, and your kids.
And I'm sure each one disclose where who's paying them, right?
Sure, transparency is where this one goes. That's the shadiest part. The influencers were told not to tag the group and not to disclose who was paying. So it lands in your feed looking like your favorite mom influencer that she just got organically worried now about Chinese AI being the recipe, as she's like sharing recipes and talking about skincare, but you actually can't track who's actually paying them.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know that the China panic goes way beyond TikTok videos, right? So it's industry-aligned think tanks that are publishing reports claiming that the data center resistance, which we know is all of us here and folks across the country, they're claiming that it's secretly foreign funded, which we know is a lie. NPR looked into the biggest of these reports and found very little evidence behind it. So meanwhile, tech executives testify in Congress that any other state regulation means losing to China. The head of Build American AI writes op-eds calling regulation a quote big gift to Beijing unquote. So social media, think tanks, congressional hearings, and op-eds, it's an echo chamber, and every wall of it is paid for by the AI industry.
That's exactly why we shouldn't buy it. Beating China is just another way for the AI industry to ensure that they're not regulated. They don't want the data center build out to be questioned. They don't want it to be slowed down. They don't want us to ask about our water or electric bill, because they want us focused on some quote unquote foreign enemy. And when we notice when these arguments happen, nobody wins, right? Nobody actually is able to get anything out of this.
Yeah, that's right. And that brings us to shady tactic number one, which is employed by big tech. In particular, we're seeing it a lot in this election season, and that's brownwashing. So, brownwashing is when an industry borrows the faces, names, and cultures of communities of color to sell something those communities never agreed to. We're going to get into a recent example in New Mexico where a new group called Elevate New Mexico pushed mailers, making it seem like Latinx people support data centers. But for context, extractive industries have run this play in New Mexico for generations. New Mexicans have seen random groups emerge, supposedly representing their voices in favor of mines and pipelines. The data center industry is doing the same thing for OpenAI and Oracle's Project Jupiter in Doña Ana County. So recently, Elevate New Mexico sent out mailers with the smiling young woman, brown skin, dark hair, next to the words saying, "A new day for New Mexico." The only thing she was missing was a plate of red and green enchiladas from Frontier Restaurant.
They really make it look like it's like a local campaign.
Yeah, for real. Like, but again, they're manufacturing it, right? So local news group Source New Mexico did some digging, and turns out Elevate New Mexico's mailing address is actually not too far from where I am in Northern Virginia, in Alexandria, Virginia. So not even local. And that smiling woman, she's a stock model. So, here she is again on a dentist website. So she other campaigns, right? And New Mexico's newest community advocate apparently is very passionate about teeth.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it gets worse. The companies behind the project registered LLCs with names like Green Chile Ventures and one called Acoma, which is the name of a sovereign pueblo. When Acoma Pueblo's governor objected, the company renamed itself Yucca Growth Infrastructure. Yucca, which happens to be the acronym of an actual New Mexico youth climate justice organization. Shout out to Yucca doing awesome work in New Mexico. They cannot, of course, we know these corporations and these developers, they can't stop stealing names. This past spring, the State Ethics Commission sued them. And here's the point of this whole countdown, right? If Project Jupiter had real community support, they'd put real community members on the mailer. They couldn't find any, so they had to buy a stock photo. That's every tactic we just showed you. Shell companies instead of transparency, robot reporters instead of journalists, ads about anything but AI, rented influencers, rented faces, and when you can't win popular support, you just manufacture it like these corporations do.
And I think that's really the point that I think is just so important to make about all of these shady tactics is the more desperate they are, the more desperate they become in terms of like looking for these types of tactics because they know they can't win it on its own, right? That's the part to really like hold on to for all of us. Whether it's polling or asking your neighbors, it is very clear how unpopular AI and data centers are right now. And the organizing that is happening is producing results. Over 100 communities have passed moratoriums. Monterey Park, California has been the first city whose voters permanently banned data centers at the ballot box, with 86% of folks that voted. Counties and different places are passing ordinances protecting their water, protecting their power, protecting their land. We're winning a lot of ground. And so that's why they have to go to these sorts of shady tactics in the countdown, because when you don't know what, if you're losing on the arguments, you just have to put a lot of money behind it.
Yep. And so, they can keep their stock photos because, we got the people, right? And so that's what we're gonna keep doing, building people power and defeat these robots. And take us to the next section, Jacinta.
Sounds good. Okay, well, thank you so much, Danny. We missed you, Taylor. Hopefully we'll be able to make the audio work for next time. We're so grateful for all of your work and standing up to all of the astroturfing and all of the shady tactics that they're using. But what the question that kind of brings up for us is like, we know they're losing, we know that why they're going to all these shady tactics, but what are they actually trying to win or buy with all of this manipulation? And to answer that, we're going to go to my favorite state, California. If you know me, you know that was a joke. That is not my favorite state, but that is for a different webinar. So let's actually look into what's going on in California. But why California? It's obviously the place where the industry lives, but it's also a place where there is a very live debate about what it looks like to regulate them. So we also know that California, when they pass a law, other states might be able to copy it or set precedent. And the industry knows that and is afraid of that. So California is where they're spending the hardest to make sure that the rules never get written. So here's the field. You can see here you have the donors, the PACs, where they're spending, and what are the policies that they're opposed. So looking first, Meta has launched its own California PAC, and they are so vain, they actually named it after themselves. So the Meta PAC is called Meta, Mobilizing Economic Transformation Across California. They've put $20 million just for the state and local races. It's important to note in all of this that Meta and Google are also backing California Leads, which funds candidates who favor pragmatic solutions. And we should all know that pragmatic in this case basically means tech-friendly, industry-friendly. And also we have Grow California to elect corporate-friendly candidates as a counterforce to labor. So they're not just protecting their industry, they're actually funding opposition to any sort of worker organizing, period. So we can see this in the chart. But here's what we have to kind of notice. This is where they're actually putting the money. And in a blue state, most of the money flows to Democrats. So the industry doesn't care about what party you're from. They actually just care about where you're going to vote on their bills. Which brings us to our next segment, which is Robot Watch. We want to identify two BroBots today. The first is Sergey Brin. Sergey Brin was a co-founder of Google and former president of Google's parent company, Alphabet. And he personally contributed $100 million to building a better California, a PAC created with the sole purpose of opposing California's proposed billionaire tax. And so California's billionaire tax, aka Proposition 40, will be voted on November 3rd. The vote could result in a one-time 5% tax on the wealth of the state's residents whose net worth exceeds $1 billion. So it is no coincidence that Proposition 40 was put on the ballot by SEIU United Healthcare Workers West. So on one side, we have healthcare workers. On the other side, a Google co-founder spending $100 million. And just think about that math. Brin is spending $100 million to stop the tax because he knows the tax would actually cost him a lot more. The other BroBot we want to highlight today is billionaire Chris Larsen, co-founder of crypto company Ripple Labs. Larsen fully funded the Golden State Promise Pact, another state-level PAC focused entirely on opposing California's billionaire tax. The PAC calls itself a coalition of California community advocates and economic leaders. So you just heard the countdown. You know what that means. Larson has also personally spent over $9 million expanding police surveillance in San Francisco through a fleet of drones and private cameras, which he can watch in real time. So this BroBot goes way back with Palantir Broligarch Peter Thiel, who was a very early investor in Ripple. So this likely won't be the last time you'll be hearing about these two BroBots right here, who are using their money to protect billionaire wealth and to surveil people. So as we're thinking about this, why are they spending all of this money in California? What are the bills that they're afraid of? So three things. We just talked about Proposition 40, the billionaire tax. On the ballot in November, one-time 5% tax on the wealth of roughly 200 billionaires, right? Put there by healthcare workers. And they're spending collectively about $100 million to kill this ballot. The second thing they're afraid of, legislation they're afraid of, the Ratepayer Protection Act. And this would stop utilities from passing data center energy costs onto your electric bill. So obviously the industry wants us to continue subsidizing their build out without noticing and making us pay the bill. And the third place that they're afraid of is AI safety and transparency laws like SB 53. The rules, this bill would create rules that would require companies to disclose how their systems work and what data they train on. The industry, of course, is saying that this type of transparency kills innovation, it will kill the industry. But what we actually know is that what it's going to kill is the right for the public to know how these tools actually work. So these are the three priorities of what they're trying to this is what they're afraid of, this is what they're trying to stop, and this is part of what their agenda is. And so we're going to be hearing more now from our panelists about this national picture, about what is going on with these AI and crypto super PACs, what they're spending their money on, what their elections are. So I would love to welcome our moderator of today's panel, Tracey Corder. Welcome, welcome, Tracey. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I am in awe of all the information that was shared.
It's a lot of scary and depressing stuff, man. When you really understand. So our democracy is on a thin string, if we can even call it that. But you can really sort of see how they're trying to destroy what little is there. And Tracey, you've worked on tons of campaigns that are sort of at this intersection of policing and tech. You've also been tracking the electoral influence of big tech for a minute now. So before we bring on our amazing panel and hear about their opinions, what do you make about what's going on, and what do you think we should be looking out for in this election season?
Yeah, I mean, I am kind of still stuck on Taylor's video. I'm sad we didn't get to hear from her, but that video is so important because, and thank you, Taylor, for calling out that astroturfing. It really illustrates what you're talking about and what the panel will talk about what these people do. What I know about this election season is that people are doing their research. So they're not just waiting for for it to be told who to vote for. They're actually going to look for that information, and they're sharing that information with their communities.
Mhm.
Our opposition knows that we are both smart and that we are right. And so they try to co-opt and spread this disinformation. So it's up to us to make sure that right information is out there and readily available. So people should know if you see an ad by Fair Shake, that's not our people. And if they see a mailer from Leading the Future, they are doing just the opposite, right? So that I think is our charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end of the day, it really is about who's your relationship and what's your source of information that actually gets us to move on to all of this. Well, I will let you to leave you to facilitate the panel. Thank you so much, Tracey, and excited to hear more.
Thank you. So I am really excited to share this conversation today. I want to introduce this panel because they're brilliant and you're going to learn so much. So first, we have strategist and policy expert Ibrahim, who is recognized for her leadership at the intersection of technology, economics, and national security. So Aya is currently a senior fellow for economic and national security at the AI Now Institute. I also like to welcome researcher and writer Molly White. Molly creates the independent newsletter Citation Needed, which provides reporting and analysis on cryptocurrency, technology, and tech policy. She also runs the website Tech Influence Watch, which tracks AI and cryptocurrency industry spending in US elections. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to welcome Kyle Morris. Kyle is the Deputy Director of Tech Oversight Project, the tech watchdog working to hold big tech giants accountable and shift the debate around tech policy in DC. Kyle has served as a senior advisor to members of Congress, Democratic campaigns, progressive organizations, and litigation teams. I told y'all this is a very, very exciting and brilliant panel. I want to make sure that we get right into it. So Molly, let's start with you. Everyone watching just met the AI super PACs, but you've been telling us for years that the playbook wasn't invented by AI. Crypto has been leveraging PACs for a few years. In fact, they just spent $130 million in 2024, and it worked. Enforcement actions against crypto dropped. Figures friendly to crypto were installed all over the federal government. So can you expand on what all of that election spending in 2024 bought for the crypto industry? And what does that tell us about what the AI industry AI industry expects its money to buy now?
Absolutely. So in 2024, we saw this massive spending out of the cryptocurrency industry. Like you mentioned, $130 million just on federal races, mostly on congressional races. And that was tremendously successful. They were able to install at least 6 pro-crypto senators, more than a dozen representatives in the House who are strongly pro-crypto. They've introduced a number of bills in Congress that are essentially written by the cryptocurrency industry. We saw one of them pass last year. It was called the Genius Act, which is a bill to regulate stablecoins, which is a subset of cryptocurrencies. Again, it was essentially written by the cryptocurrency industry to benefit their companies. There's been another bill this year called the Clarity Act, which they claim will bring clarity to the cryptocurrency market structure situation. And it, again, is written by the cryptocurrency industry. We actually saw Coinbase single-handedly pause discussion on that bill in earlier this year when they decided it wasn't to their liking, which is incredible to see that level of control in Congress. We saw Congress say that they were going to be writing legislation in a so-called tripartisan way with Republicans, Democrats, and the crypto industry. So that is what $130 million gets you, not to mention all of the changes we've seen at the regulatory level in the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which are now led by Trump loyalists. We've seen more than 20 enforcement actions or investigations against cryptocurrency companies dropped or paused or settled for very nominal amounts. And those are against basically any crypto company you can think of. So Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, any of those major cryptocurrency firms has had an enforcement action against them dropped or an investigation paused, in some cases multiple. And so this is what we can expect, I think, if the AI industry is able to leverage this playbook in a very similar way, which is to spend huge amounts of money to install allies in Congress who will then allow the industry to essentially dictate policy going forward. And we've already seen massive spending out of the AI industry from super PACs that are overlapping with the crypto PACs. They share leadership, they share backing. And so far, AI has spent over $56 million, and we're not even through the primaries. So I think we are in for a very concerning election season as we watch more and more industries adopt these tactics. And of course, crypto is continuing to spend. They've already spent $78.7 million. The two industries combined have already hit that $130 million amount that was the total spending across all elections in 2024.
Wow. Gaia, thank you for sharing that with us. Aya, a few minutes ago, we showed how the industry is paying influencers to push China panic. And it doesn't stop at TikTok. It's in think tank reports, op-eds, and congressional testimony. The message from the industry is regulate us and China wins. You've actually worked on national security policy at the State Department and White House. So help us break down the national security case big tech is making against regulation. What's real and what's covered, and why is this a major argument of choice for the industry?
Thank you for having me. This is not a new playbook. I mean, a lot of these tactics are familiar. We saw it with social media companies and the big tech companies, frankly, during the Obama administration. And the argument over and over again was, if you do not let us move the way that we want to, if you do not let us expand, if you do not let us roll up other companies and wipe out any competition, if you don't let us violate Americans' privacy, if, on and on, then somehow China will beat us. And whether in that case or today, it is a false choice. Americans do not have to be either at the mercy of our largest companies or at the mercy of our largest competitor. We have other options. And this idea that we have to give up basic protections, basic civil rights, basic civil liberties in service of some vague notion of national security is unacceptable. The reason that they turn to this argument so often is because it's a very powerful one. And what I find very frustrating with my colleagues is, you're in a discussion when national security is invoked, that's sort of the end of the argument and the end of the discussion, whereas it really should be the beginning of one. Why is this a national security issue? How is this a national security issue? What are the trade-offs? But it has become such an easy, like, trump card, for lack of a better word, that people rely on it very quickly. And the other thing that ends up happening is in focusing on what China is doing and the risks therein, we ignore, we give a free pass to our own companies. I mean, Facebook was conducting experiments on its users. Instagram has destroyed the self-esteem of millions of girls. OpenAI is currently being sued because a young person was driven to take their life engaging with this chatbot. Our companies are not behaving either. So the continued argument of we are better, how are we better, right? How is American tech leadership better? And because they have kept the argument or the debate to this binary of it's us versus them, we are never given the space to push. So while money in politics is a huge, huge part of this, the other sort of behind the scenes piece is when we push, when there's political pressure, then there are conversations about, well, if you restrain us in any way, then, again, China wins. Like, don't you love America? Don't you love our national security? I would just say ultimately the reason they rely on this argument is it's a very effective one. And you'll notice that in a lot of their public remarks, they're invoking geopolitics and national security over and over again. And I think it's on us to demystify a lot of that and push back and present alternative options that are not, you give up all of your rights or China wins.
Thank you for that. I think that y'all have both set the table to let us know why that is so important. So now I'm gonna move to you, Kyle, because I want to talk about what they're pushing for. Tech Oversight Project built the only public ad library of AI super PAC ads. That's over 100 of them for 17 different industry groups. Plus, you did the research book on who funds them. Now, you have watched more of these ads than anyone should have to. But I want to ask, what did these ads themselves reveal that the FEC filings cannot? And what patterns should our audience know about?
Yeah, so I want to talk about three different trends. I think the first one is across the board, we talked about it earlier, they're concealing their agenda. All races, all ad buys, with the exception of some C4 issue ads from Public First Action that talk about bioweapons or chips export controls. That's by and large not the ads that you're seeing in your community. And as we talked about earlier, you're seeing healthcare, you're seeing affordability, you're seeing all of these masked things that have nothing to do with their agenda. and ultimately at the end of the day, like when Meta came into South Dakota, dropped $500,000 on digital ads right before the primary, like South Dakota, like Searchlight, which is a nonprofit newsroom that does really excellent work on the investigative front, could not figure out that Meta was behind these ads. They are coming in to do cloak and dagger stuff. And that's just like one of the key trends we're seeing. And I think the second thing that you can probably see here is that like they're not spending in like hotly contested races. And I think the New York 12th district is maybe an exception to this rule where it's an open primary. There's a bunch of Democrats jockeying for what is probably like a lifetime Democratic seat. You're seeing them come in and spend like $1.5 million on Bob Menendez in New Jersey. You're seeing $1.1 million for Richie Torres. Neither are facing like reasonable, primary opposition. This is just about buying influence, And I think what's really fascinating about all of this is like Josh Blasto and Zoc Moffitt, who are the two like Democrat and Republican behind Leading the Future, pitched this story to like Politico magazine a couple weeks ago where they're like, we are the big money men behind, big tech. And it was like so laughable because they're talking about how they're undefeated, but like they're not spending in hotly contested races. These are like by and large positive ads to like curry favor with members of Congress. So it's like, go knock yourselves out. I think like at the end of the day, when you look at like the ad content, particularly out of the Republican side, and I'm going to call out American Mission in particular here, the ads are all Trump endorsement ads. And the ads also usually come like 3 or 4 days after Trump endorsed someone. So I think like when you think about what Leading the Future is doing here, I think they're just a MAGA psyop here. Like this is specifically about currying favor with the administration. It's about looking good to Donald Trump, and it's about looking good to the safeguard people that are in the administration. And lastly, I think one of the things that I think is interesting as like an anecdote is that Meta spending at the state level in particular closely mirrors their like data center like expansion progress. Like they're spending heavily in Texas, Georgia, Ohio, Alabama. These are all states that they have like over 60 data centers. And so I think it's really interesting when you look back to Meta's January earnings call. They talked about how they're going in on data centers, and that is where they're going to be spending their money over the course of the next year. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that their political spending would match that.
Yeah, thank you. Molly, I'm going to come back to you. You track crypto and AI money side by side. Where are these two industry agendas actually aligned, and where do they split? Like, are we looking at one tech money block or two industries that happen to share a lot of the same interest?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it's a little bit of both. We do see significant overlap in the interests from these super PACs. In fact, two of the biggest AI and crypto super PACs are both heavily funded by Andreessen Horowitz, for example. So some of the same players have notable interests in both sectors. We're also seeing billionaires like Chris Larsen, who is behind the Ripple cryptocurrency industry, spending a lot of money on AI issues because he holds an interest in that particular area. And so it's not a clean split where something is an AI race or a crypto race. And certainly there have been numerous races where we have seen both crypto and AI PACs jump in. So for example, Richie Torres in New York has seen spending from both crypto and AI PACs. Kevin Hern, a Republican in Oklahoma, running for Senate. Jessica Steinman, a Republican in Texas. And so there are numerous races where there are interests on both sides supporting or opposing a candidate. So far, I've tracked 23 races that have seen spending from both crypto and AI PACs. Most notably, or most commonly, it is the Republican arm of the Fair Shake Network, which is a PAC called Defend American Jobs, and it is the Republican arm of the Leading the Future AI PAC, which is called American Mission. And in 11 races, they have supported the same candidate. But there are some trends where these two PACs diverge. So there are certainly also numerous races where either crypto or AI is spending, but not both. We've seen the crypto PACs tend to fund more Republicans than Democrats compared to the AI PACs. So about 60% of the crypto PAC money is going to Republicans this cycle, whereas AI is actually spending more in favor of Democrats. 62% of their spending is going to Democrats. As you've mentioned, or as other panelists have mentioned, it's not always about supporting, the ideal candidate in their minds. It's often who can win this race. Can we get the most pro-crypto or pro-AI candidate into that seat? So those are a number of the trends. We've also seen AI go in much more heavily on state level spending than crypto, because for the most part, AI has more state level issues that they're focused on when it comes to things like data center moratoriums, whereas crypto is heavily invested in getting the federal government to override state level legislation or regulation. And so, they've been very focused, for example, on making sure that the CFTC is the primary enforcer when it comes to prediction markets, which is sort of a, gambling-like product that is heavily tied with crypto, instead of state level gambling regulators who have been trying to enforce gambling laws against those companies.
Thank you. And I'm going to come back to you to talk about AI industry PAC. So they've been categorized into pro safety versus pro industry camps. So Anthropic Super PAC wears the safety label, but we know those camps run deeper than two PACs. OpenAI has largely dropped the safety branding. Meta, which we already heard about, is wrapping itself in the open source flag. Anthropic markets itself as the responsible one. So I want to ask you to unpack this for us. Let us know how their different positions in the AI market shape which each one lobbies for, where the real fault lines are, and most importantly, what they all aligned on that isn't said out loud.
So I would just start by saying that there are no good guys here. These are all just guys, and they all have a bottom line, and they're all trying to make money, and they're all trying to shape the market, including its governance, in ways that advantage them over the other competitors. So, for example, Meta wrapping itself in the open source, flag. That would be news to me that Meta is a big proponent of actual competition, because historically Meta will buy any company or take out of business any would-be competitor. During the Obama administration, again, they bought up WhatsApp, they bought up Instagram, something that today, if they attempted, I think we would be looking at with a lot more scrutiny. So in that case, this is about their concerns about falling behind and watching a duopoly be established between Anthropic and OpenAI, where frankly those are really the two leaders. This whole safety rhetoric, I mean, it really has been co-opted, and particularly if they're making comparisons to, nuclear and nuclear weapons. How we came to decide how we would restrict and contain nuclear weapons, these flowed through inherently democratic processes, right? You elected leaders that then signed agreements with other countries. You elected leaders that appointed regulators, right? You supported a particular policy or approach to governing and constraining that technology. Today, we have like 7 guys trying to define safety for the rest of us. And it's inherently anti-democratic, as is the build out. We see it with the organizing around data centers. At the end of the day, right, the bottom line here is that this is exactly why we can't allow the debate around AI to be defined by in the confines of Silicon Valley. They are, in their own words, looking to renegotiate the social contract, to reshape our societal institutions, to redefine how we relate and engage with one another, how we shape our economy, how we shape our society, and increasingly how we shape our democracy. And in their minds, the path is innovation at any cost, even if the cost is democracy itself and increasingly humanity itself. Because now they are talking about trade out loud. Well, you're mad about the water usage. Kids use water too. What about that? Like, that is the degree to which we have devolved. And again, I think this is why it's so important for organizers to be privy to the national security arguments, because that is such a powerful countervailing force to what folks are trying to demonstrate is the actual will and preference of voters.
Thank you. So, Kyle, I want to ask you about this. A lot of folks focus on OpenAI versus Anthropic in the AI super PAC world. What do you think that picture misses? And can you talk to us about Guardrails Alliance, like why it was formed? Tell us about the field it's building, what the field it's building looks like, what policy fights it's showing up for, and the infrastructure it's putting in place beyond any single election.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for this question. I think it's a very good one. I think if you take a look at a lot of reporting around sort of the AI super PACs, it always kind of comes down to this like open AI versus Anthropic, like sort of polar system. And like the issue that I sort of find here is that like at the end of the day, and this gets at the point that I was bringing up, which is like who is in control and who is ultimately benefiting from AI. And I think what's very exciting about Guardrails is that like they're trying to answer the central question here of like who's going to be in control and who's going to benefit. And the answer here is people, like actual people, and not big tech monopolies and not big tech CEOs. So I think Guardrails is actually one of the better developments to come out of the last few months. They launched recently. I think it was in the last like 60 or 90 days. I think what's interesting is a couple different things. Like one, I think they are not anti-tech. I think they are just anti-big tech coming in and trying to write the rules against workers, against unions, against safety, against everyday people. And I think that that's a really exciting thing. I think it's also very interesting that people at the labs, and I'm talking about OpenAI and Anthropic, employees that are dissatisfied with what their companies are doing at the federal level are spending and donating money to Guardrails. And I think that that is a very interesting thing because this is rooted in not really companies' interests, but in like actual people. And I think that that's something that we need to recapture in this debate. And I think like in terms of policy fight, I think what they're doing a very good job of right now is being a very conscious debate on the left and bringing up who Leading the Future is supporting on the Democratic side, particularly within the House Democratic caucus. And I would say like naming members that are getting support from Leading the Future and asking them to disavow that support. And I think also just presenting an alternative of what advocating for strong AI policy should look like and why it doesn't have to be controlled by these two warring companies, where their benefits at the end of the day, like both these companies are going to IPO probably in the next year. They're going to be publicly traded companies. Their interests are going to be different than ours. And I think that that's something that the progressive community should be aware of. I think particularly the last part I'll say about Guardrails is particularly in the progressive movement, I feel like we never have enough time, we never have enough energy, we never have enough resources. We should be very careful about where we spend all of those three things. And I think having a fighter in the debate that is for us and emanates from us is actually a deeply important thing.
Absolutely. Coming back to you, Aya. AI now has done a lot of research on how the industry is on financially shakier ground than it looks. You all also have been working to equip local elected officials with concrete policy solutions to leverage. Where do you see the industry being most vulnerable right now? And what should communities be demanding from their state and local officials? I think that we lost your audio.
Sorry about that. So in terms of where they might be the most shaky, I would say look at where the market seems to be worried, because what we've seen over the last year, and particularly the last few months, is that more and more of the capital is moving away from banks and towards less regulated private credit and private equity. The risk is being moved away from more heavily regulated financial institutions to vehicles that are less regulated. However, those vehicles also expose pension funds to quite a bit of risk. And so who is caught up and who would be affected by like financial collapse of this ecosystem. I mean, the exposure is across our economy and across across all people, not just those who are directly invested, but even those who are passively invested through their retirements. Um, at the end of the day, this whole ecosystem depends on two things: capital and compute. And capital, we may not have as many levers all the time there, though there are certainly things that you can do. With compute, that's data centers. So all of the organizing that folks are doing, that is a way to limit or slow down their ability to scale up on compute, which slows down, limits their abilities to scale up their companies, to expand on their models, and to continue innovating at a rate that they themselves keep telling us is too dangerous to allow, but also we still have to let it out into the wild because reasons. Either the models that they are developing are too dangerous to be released, or they're not, unless they need to just be dangerous enough for a maximum IPO share price when they go public. Data center organizing, like that's a muscle building, and it is a vehicle for a much bigger fight around our economy and our society and how it works and how it doesn't, and how people are represented in it and or not. The thing to look at is how can you leverage the organizing that you're doing on the ground into political leverage. You see the very quick sort of about faces that many of our electeds are doing, right? You were for data centers 5 minutes ago, and now you're like, I could never get behind a data center. That's power, and that's power that came from organizing. And so I would just continue to encourage people to make clear to their local and state elected officials that they are watching, that they understand what's happening, and that these are things that they don't want in their community. At the end of the day, if there is a community out there that really wants a data center, I'm not going to be the one to tell them you can't have this data center. But I'm also not going to support a universe in which the community is consistently saying we don't want this. And whether it's for economic growth and development or national security reasons or whatever the theme of the day is, that should supersede what the community and what voters are saying that they want.
Great. I sadly only have one more question for y'all because I could talk to y'all for many more hours. I have so many more questions from what you already said. But this is a question for everyone. We're going to do a lightning round to close this out, less than a minute each. Name one thing you're watching between now and November. It could be a race, a bill, a disclosure deadline. What are you watching that tells you which way things are going to go for the BroBots or the people? Give our audience one thing to watch with you. Molly, I'll start with you.
Sure. So this is maybe cheating because it is slightly more than one thing, but I am watching the races where both the crypto and AI industries are spending heavily and then not getting what they spent in favor of. So numerous races where crypto or AI, or sometimes both, have come out in favor of a candidate and that candidate has lost their primary, or vice versa. They've opposed a candidate heavily and they've won their primary. In those cases, I'm very curious to see how things will go in the general election. If I had to narrow it down to just one thing, I guess, beyond that, it would be the state of Illinois, because Illinois has featured several of those races where the industry has come out heavily opposed or in favor of candidates and have been rebuked by the voters. And I think that it will be very interesting to see if people are essentially wising up to some of these playbooks and realizing that, what they see in those advertisements does not actually reflect what the person who may be representing them will support if elected to Congress. So that's what I'll be watching.
All right, thank you, Molly. Kyle?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm going to be watching the most between now and election day is sort of how the super PACs bob and weave with House leadership. I think, I don't want to, jinx anything, but, I think this could be a very good year for Democrats. I think what will be very interesting to see is the about face that both of these companies are about to do after spending the last 2 years courting not just Donald Trump, but the Republican Congress, and trying to shape the debate in a way from last summer, where it was like, what if we actually had no state AI laws, to now being forced to come to the table by hopefully some progressives in Congress and being forced to deal with what AI safety looks like, what worker safety looks like. And it'll be interesting to see how they shape that debate from the inside. And, I think one of the things that tech companies do is they kind of infiltrate leadership, and they're very good at killing things before they get going, or bogging down bills that get momentum. So I think you'll start to see some of that process get started in the days leading up to the election, and then certainly from the period after election day through swearing in.
Thank you. And I am going to actually close this out.
Okay, also a little bit cheating, but I would just say, like, as a backdrop to all of the announcements that they're making, I always have an eye on the IPO timelines, because I do think that that affects how they talk about their own sort of intentions and plans. But the other thing that I'm specifically looking at, and I think will be very important, is there's an ongoing lawsuit filed by the NAACP against XAI that set up they have the Colossus data center. It's powered by these methane turbines. It's something the community does not want. It's terrible for the environment. And the NAACP has sued on behalf of the community residents. And in the course of this lawsuit, the Trump DOJ intervened, and they intervened on national security grounds. They said, in fact, that this data center and the technology it's powering is paramount to national security. So the argument that the administration is laying the groundwork for is almost a veto for any future private lawsuits that folks may file against data centers that they do not want in their backyard. So I would just keep an eye on that, because I think that may end up being a much bigger obstacle than it seems today.
Wonderful. You have given us so much to think about. Please show some love for the chat, or for the panel in the chat. Folks have already been talking about how it's a great panel. Thank you for your brilliance. Thank you for your time. I am going to pass it back to Jacinta, and I am so grateful to have been here.
Thank you so much, Tracey. And yeah, thank you so much to our panelists. I learned a ton. I feel like I'm constantly drowning and trying to understand who is doing what and where all these things are happening. So really also as a big lover of nerds, really appreciate all of the nerdiness and dedication to helping just clarify what is going on in this moment. So thank you so much to all of our presenters. And for all of the folks who are anxiously asking, can I watch the recording? Can I get the links? We are going to share everything up. Things will be accessible to everyone. So just know that that is there. And for everyone to also know, these amazing webinar series, these political education moments, are part of a broader campaign, right? BroBots versus the People is not just about making sure that we're educated, but also making sure that we are taking action. So if folks go to brobotsversusthepeople.org, you will be able to see all of the ways that you can kind of plug in. And you can use this form that we're going to share right now in the chat to tell us about your campaign and if you want to plug in. So one of the things that we're organizing is actions. You might have seen some pictures out there, some amazing banner drops using BroBots versus the People. We have some information. We have people's assemblies, people movement assemblies, where folks are coming together and having these conversations. We're creating a lot of content online to be able to get this information out to our folks. So if you're like, I want to plug in, but I need more information, I need more support, I want to talk to someone, please fill out the form, and this will be a great way for us to be in touch and to bring you into the campaign. And if you're looking for other resources, for example, if you're like, oh, I want to know how to offer an assembly or things like that, you can go to the website, download a toolkit that we have that has the art, sample agendas, a bunch of resources. So just know that there's a lot of information and content out there that hopefully will help support the amazing organizing that so many folks are part of. And so we have, I know I promised that we're going to watch the video. I know some of y'all are holding on. We're going to watch the animation in just a second, but wanting to flag two big things that are coming up next. The first is that we're going to be hosting convening a strategy session here in Chicago, Illinois, one of the states that you should be watching in terms of what's going on with all of this tech money in politics. But we're going to be hosting a convening called Fighting Techno-Fascism, Power, Surveillance, and Resistance. It's going to be a one-day convening. If you go to the website, you can register there. Or if folks need support with waiving registration, we're happy to offer that support. We're going to be accompanied by Naomi Klein and Astra Taylor that are just going to be out with their book, Fighting Techno-Fascism. Oh, sorry, End Times Fascism. We're also going to be having Gil Duran there talking about the Nerd Reich, his new book that's out. So we'll have a lot of really good conversations. Have a guest speaker coming from Argentina to tell us about how they're fighting techno-fascists. So it's going to be a really great conversation, a great moment for folks to continue these discussions. And of course, we have our next session. The crypto money corrupting your politicians, which will be the next political session, political education session that you have registered for. Okay, I think those are the announcements. Are y'all ready to watch the video? You want to watch the animation? The people taking on the BroBots? Let's do it. Go for it, please. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for joining us. This is real art created by a real human. Created these illustrations to be able to help all of our organizing, get us to feel the power of what can happen when we come together. Thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to seeing you next time.